Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Santa Clara County Office of Education Grant Training Series, Writing the Narrative. The purpose of this training is to equip participants with the knowledge and skills to write a winning grant narrative. Please note our other videos, including Is the Grant a Good Fit? And How to Read an RFA, which may be helpful prior to watching this training. My name is Rochelle Harding, and I am the Associate Grant Writer Research Analyst for the Grants Operations and Partnerships Office at Santa Clara County Office of Education, and I will be walking you through today's training. Real quick, just thought I would give a little background on myself and my own grant writing journey. I started out my career in early childhood education as a teacher. Started as a substitute, then an assistant, and then a lead. And then I took a little break while I was raising kids, and then I was a director for an after-school program for children's ages TK through sixth grade here in San Jose. And then I got my master's degree in international community development. And so I spent time in the community development sector for a few years before making my way to the County Office of Education. So my grant writing journey began as a volunteer editor for Seattle Pacific University, which was my undergrad school, alma mater. Later, I wrote a proposal for an outdoor classroom when I was working at the Dupree Center for Children in Princeton, New Jersey. In grad school, I wrote a proposal for an occupational training classroom for widows in Burundi, Africa. And then after graduating with my master's, I began writing grants and implementing grants for local nonprofit here in San Jose to address food insecurity in Santa Clara County through urban gardening. And this experience led me to pursue a full-time position here at the SCCOE. Here, I felt like I could refine my skills and expand my impact by writing grants for children and educators in the county. It's been amazing to see some of the grants that have passed through our office have had a direct impact on my own children who are in the local public school system. So examples of this include COVID-related services, technology, mental health services, anti-violence and bullying programs. So even though sometimes it feels like you might not see the fruit of your labor as a grant writer, please know that the impacts are real. And it's really neat when you get a chance to be able to see that, the front end pre-award to award, and then be able to see those community impacts is really been amazing. So I hope that this workshop will help you develop the skills to be successful. So let's get started. All right. So to begin, we'll focus on how to write the narrative portion of a grant application. The narrative describes a problem or a need that's important to you or your organization and identifies a compelling solution. The goal of grant writing is to compel funders to invest in your idea or your solution. And while grant writing is a unique form of technical writing with its own standards and best practices, anyone can learn how to write a grant. This training provides a general framework for writing grant narratives, which is just one component of a grant. However, each grant will have questions specific to the funding opportunity and what information is important for the funder. So this is just going to be kind of some of the key standard elements of a narrative, but you may encounter additional questions that are more, specific and targeted to the funding and, topic that you are addressing. And so please read the application carefully to understand all requirements. Other grant components that may be part of the full scope of a grant proposal include a cover page, a budget and a budget narrative, letters of support, appendices, attachments, assurances, resumes, timelines, supplemental evaluation attachments. There could be a variety of things. It's basically like writing a research paper. But don't let that scare you. It still is very doable, and hopefully this gives you just a framework of where to start. So as you can see on our agenda and sequence, we're going to start with grant preparation. We're going to talk about an outline, the actual writing, the editing, and then the final narrative. All right, so the first phase is preparing to write the grant. So before you jump into writing, it's important to be prepared and to get organized. So you're going to want to start by reading the solicitation and highlight key information. So some of these, key things that you're going to want to note right away. When is the due date? What are the funding amounts? What is the grading rubric? Not all grants will have a rubric provided for you, but sometimes they'll tell you how many points each section is worth. So you can kind of adjust like which sections you're going to put, your most effort into making the best possible answer, most thorough answer. Also note specific limitations. So this is what the grant funds can and cannot be used for. And then finally, format. You may not think that it's very important, but surprisingly, you could get disqualified and your grant may not even be considered if you go over the word count or if your font or your margins are off. That is more true for like state and federal funding, but some foundations are very strict as well. So you just want to demonstrate that you can follow the directions and that they can trust you with, these large sums of money to do your programs. So one of the ways they do that is, did you follow the directions of the proposal? So next we have boilerplate information. This is information that can be reused multiple times from grant to grant, and just having minor tweaks to kind of tailor it to each particular project. So this is going to include, a statement about your organizational background, who you are, what you do, who you serve, and where. It might include contact information in the front section of that, and you may also highlight significant awards or accomplishments. In this section, one of the things that you can kind of tailor to each grant is to kind of make a statement about why you are a highly qualified candidate to address the problem, and why you stand out among others. So you might highlight an award or a particular event, with X amount of attendees, and, kind of describe the impact of that event. That demonstrates you are a credible organization to provide the services that you're proposing and can be trusted with the money. So finally, in this first section of preparation, you're going to want to create a list of items to track. So this is just your task list. It is essential that you stay organized and that you don't wait till the last minute to complete your proposal. The activities you describe in your proposal are commitments that you're making to the funder. So oftentimes these cannot be changed once you make the commitment. And if you are able to change it, you need to contact the funder first, propose your new idea, and then get approval. If not, you could risk needing to return the funds or just not developing a good relationship with the funder. They might not, select you for, a second round of funding if that becomes available. So just be sure that you're carefully planning, that you know what you want to include, and that you think of it as kind of like a contract. It's not the formalized contract yet, but basically if you get awarded, you're saying, here's what I commit to do. And so you really want to think through your plan there. So again, items to track include a list of tasks, due dates, who is responsible for each task, when when do they need to have it done by? And if there's dependencies like, task 1 has to be completed before you can go to task 2 because it's dependent on each other. They're not always dependent upon the previous, but sometimes they are. And so you want to make note of that. Also, things like I mentioned, the word count or character count, that's becoming more common, where you only have, a certain number of characters to make your case. And so you have to be very direct, to the point, no extra, flourishing adjectives or descriptors. And so you're also on this task list, you're also going to have which forms are you going to need to fill out, who's responsible for that form. If you have to send it out to an agency for approval or for their partnership signature, you're going to want to plan the time that you need to get it to them, to have them review it and then send it back. And then you have to take that and compile it into your final document. So it really does require some forethought and planning. All right, so then moving on to the outline. We've prepared, we've studied our RFA, we've read through if there's any FAQ, the frequently asked questions. Sometimes funders will put one of those out, or they'll have a webinar. So that was in our preparation. Now we're beginning to write our outline. So you're going to outline key components of the grant. And we strongly suggest using a logic model to help you develop your program or project. The logic model, as its name suggests, provides a logical sequence and framework for your project. The logic model can act as an outline to guide your writing and assist in building a program or project that is effective, achievable, and impactful. A logic model is not always required for proposals, but it can still be very useful as it contains high-level information that is often addressed in specific narrative questions. So it's going to really help keep you focused. It's going to help you describe in your narrative how your activities are going to produce the intended results that you're hoping to see and how you're going to measure that. And so it's really helpful to have that visible for a reference while you're answering your questions, because that way it'll help you keep like this logical framework that you've thought it through, and here are the steps that you're going to achieve. Here are the resources you need. Here are the people who will be involved, all these things. And the logic model just gives an outline of that. We have a separate video on logic models that I would encourage you to watch if you choose to create a logic model. So just kind of in summary, logic models help you identify your scope, activities, and outcomes, your measures of success. And there, like I said, there's a separate training on how to use logic models. Other helpful videos, in addition to the logic model video, are the how to identify if the grant's a good fit, which I mentioned earlier, and reviewing an RFA or solicitation. So those two are just short videos that kind of help you think through what to look for when you're evaluating whether a grant is a good thing to invest your time to go after, because they are time consuming. And yeah, if you're a likely candidate to win the funding. All right, moving on. So in our outline, the first thing we're going to want to do is address or identify the problem or need and our target population. So in this part of the narrative, you're going to identify your compelling problem or need. Again, compelling. So it has to be something that is needed by the community, that that you have a clear plan of how you're going to address it and communicate it in a way that's compelling to funders. You're going to also want to include the factors that contribute to the problem or need that you wish to address. So some of the key questions that you want to think about when you're identifying the problem or need statement is who's going to be served, what needs do they have, what local data demonstrates evidence of this need, where is your program located, and if space permits, you could include a short story to illustrate the need. This is usually found more so on like foundation or corporate grants. Sometimes state and federal don't give you a lot of space to add this, but having that personal story of a participant, if this is a program that you've had, it's not brand new, having that success story or a specific comment or quote can be impactful and kind of help your narrative become more compelling to the person who is reviewing it. And so an example of a problem or need statement might be low graduation rates. So that's the problem. And the factors that contribute to low graduation rates. So as you're thinking through what factors are causing graduation rates to be low. So it could be school climate, it could be attendance, poor attendance, or absenteeism, socioeconomic barriers or demographic barriers or factors. It could be, a variety of different societal and interconnected causes. And so you're going to want to try to identify what is the root cause. And then you're also going to want to identify maybe one or two at most reputable. So this is going to be scholarly or academic peer-reviewed sources to cite so that you can, kind of give weight to like, it's not just, your anecdotal evidence that is saying this is the need. Here is a statistic that says, 80% of children at this school are, not or are qualified for free and reduced lunch. And so that demonstrates an economic need. So that could be an example. Use cites. So I have a little side note here, use cites like the CDEs or California Department of Education, if you're here in California. Their DataQuest has a lot of school data and breaks it down by demographics and year. Eddata.org and kidsdata.org or the census.gov. All of these websites are helpful when you're trying to find some of those key data factors to put into your problem or need statement. Okay, so next you've described what the need is, you've demonstrated through an academic source or through one of these websites that collects data for education. And so you've identified your problem really well. And now you're going to look at identifying solutions. So how are you going to address the problem? What research and evidence-based actions are you going to take? And with the weight more heavily on the evidence-based, research can still be maybe in the theoretical realm, but evidence-based means it's been practiced and it's been evaluated and it has been proven successful in similar scenarios. So maybe similar demographics or similar, ages, ethnicity, diversity, similar, urban, rural, or economic factors. So those, when those things are similar and you can find a research program that serves the same demographic and uses a model that is similar to the one that you're going to implement or even the same, that's going to give weight to say, hey, this has been done before and we know that we can be successful. So again, be specific and connect your approach to other successful models. So what are the best practices in the field? You may have an innovative idea, but make sure it's also framed by these evidence-based practices. So you might start with an existing framework of what, is best practice or works, and then kind of integrate an innovative twist, to say, we're going to try something new and we think it could work for these reasons. Maybe there was a pilot study done in a different community that showed promise, and you're going to try that as well, or implement something slightly different. Again, you're going to want more than anecdotal proof. So while it's really important to get community input, having an official research-based study that collects data is going to give more weight to your solution and the efficacy of the solution than if you just said, well, we talked to, all the teachers in the school and here's what they said. That's still good and that's still important. And that could maybe be like supplemental, but you want to really correlate it with like a peer-reviewed research-based approach. And again, even more than research, evidence-based. So hopefully that is helpful as you're thinking through this, identifying your solutions. So once again, this is a really good place to kind of flesh out even more. How is your organization or department uniquely situated to address this problem? So you could briefly list your accomplishments, your positive track record, or qualifications that make you a good fit for implementing the solution. And some grants ask for the key personnel involved in the project or program, including their role and qualifications that make them a good fit for implementing the solution. So this is also going to give credibility to your team. Maybe they're experts in their field. And some grants are also going to ask for to see this key personnel in a table. So you might use a table format to just nicely present all the information of who's on the team, what they're responsible for, what their qualifications are. And some grants actually even request the resume of the team members. So you could use a table to convey this information if requested. Answering these questions will help you design a program that is innovative, evidence-based, and which provides meaningful impact for your participants. All right, the next part of this section, how will you measure success? So what changes are you looking to make short and long term? And what things or indicators will identify that you have succeeded? One indicator that your program or intervention could be is improving graduation rates, which we had mentioned in a previous example. So if that's your solution, an indicator might be improved attendance rates and test scores. These two factors indicate that students are likely to successfully reach graduation, because if they're attending class, they're absorbing the information, and if they're doing well on their tests, they're more likely to be feeling successful and motivated to graduate. So define specific data to be measured and tracked over time. How often will you gather this data? What types of data will you collect and why? Will you gather qualitative data such as stories, quotes, photos, and student projects? How often will you collect the data? Will it be quarterly, pre or post program? Will it be surveys, enrollment data, attendance, or training events that, all of those, the test scores, the attendance, that type of thing is our quantitative data. And then the qualitative is more, like I was saying, the stories, the quotes, that type of thing. All right. And for more information on this topic, again, please refer to our video training on measurable outcomes on our YouTube playlist, and that is linked at the SCCOE website. Okay, and our last part of the outline is going to be about sustainability. How are you going to sustain the project? How will you sustain the program or project after the grant funding is exhausted? Is this something that is going to be finite to the period of the grant and have a clear ending, or is it something that is going to be propelled into the future and the grant money is just kind of a way to get you started? Funders do want to see that you're planning for long-term sustainability, and This should be more concrete than just like, we're going to apply for additional grants. You could be thinking creatively about like fee for service, selling a product, if that is allowable with your organization structure, or some other way of, implementing a donor campaign, or, a variety of ways to think through. Could be partnerships with organizations. So just think through that. And is this sustainable? What could we do to keep it going so that the work doesn't, end with the end of the grant, so that it has that lasting impact. And then finally, funders will likely have other questions that are specific to the grant program in your organization. This section is meant to provide you, though, with the key concepts that should be included in the narrative. So once again, just as a review, we can use our logic model as a framework. We'll identify the problem and need and the target population. We will describe our solution and the design of the program. We will identify how we will measure success, what will be the indicators and how frequently we will measure, and then how we will sustain the project. So those are the key components. All right, so now we move on to the actual writing. So writing tips, keep your logic model and your outline open or print it out for easy reference, and refer back to the RFA. You're going to want to read through this again before you begin writing, so you can keep the key concepts and the main points of each question in your mind as you're crafting your answer. As you write, keep in mind that you're writing for a general audience, and that the reader is likely not going to be a content expert. So if you're writing about, a specific math program or something, that has jargon that is very, niche to your field, don't use that academic language. You're going to want to speak in, easy, plain terms, as if you're explaining it to a friend or a colleague who's not in your field or in your, same department or something. So yeah, just make the assumption that the reader doesn't have the same content expertise that you may have. Be sure, as just a reminder, answer all parts of the question. And a lot of these questions now are coming out with, they have a question number 1, and then there's part A, B, C, D. And so you're just going to want to be sure that you have really touched on the key words and the key ideas from each question in order to get the full amount of points for the answer. And again, it's better to be complete than to be perfect. So there's always endless opportunity for perfecting a grant or any writing project that you're doing. And so I would just encourage you to make sure it's complete, that all the key components are there, rather than having this perfectly crafted, words and compelling narrative. That is the goal eventually, but I know that we're all juggling multiple projects and have very busy lives. So complete is better than perfect, and just want to encourage you in that. And then this next part of the writing that we really want you to be thinking through is, how are you addressing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in your project or program? If you are providing services to a community with 30% Vietnamese students, are you offering translation? Are you, thinking through the things that are important to the people in your demographic? And are you providing multiple ways for them to engage with the program design that you're creating? These are things to just keep in mind and really study and know your community and your demographics so that you can best meet their needs. And don't make assumptions. You always want as much as possible to find from the community their voice, what they want. And I would say if you have a short time period where, you know, you don't have time to talk to a bunch of people, try talking with one or two community leaders. It could be an educator, a teacher in the field who serves, you know, the exact community that you want to work with, or a variety of other community partners that you could just have a meeting with one or two people to kind of get that perspective, because you can also always build it into your implementation, a planning period where you're kind of gathering more community input, but just having that little touch base at the beginning can be really helpful. All right. Okay, so then next here, I just have some final key considerations. So your language, going along with the DEIA suggestions, is to keep it inclusive, unbiased. For the most part, community and person-centered first language. So this would be not describing somebody as an impoverished student or a homeless student. It would be a student who is experiencing homelessness or a student who is living in a economically disadvantaged community. And there are some exceptions to this. Sometimes if it's more of an identity, so it could be like race, gender, those types of things are often identity first language and then the person. So I am a woman, you know, I am not a person who is a woman, you know, or I am, you know, a European Swedish woman instead of I am a woman who is from Sweden or something like that. So just things to keep in mind as, and always I would say the best practice is to ask the community, if at all possible, how do they want to be described? Finally, cultural relevance. Make sure you're informed by informed by and inclusive of the community that you are serving. So one quick example, when I was working at another organization, we were offering, it was just organic gardening, and we were offering a community, you know, a variety of vegetables to grow. And we didn't find out for 2 years that one of the vegetables that we were providing, they didn't like, but, you know, there were some cultural barriers in that, you know, the modesty of not, you know, critiquing the person they're working with. And, you know, there was a power differential because we were providing resources. And so it really took building that relationship to understand and know that we could really meet their true needs, not just what we thought their needs were. So just to keep that in mind as you're, you know, planning your programs and writing your narrative. There's also the American Disability Act that you can refer to ensure inclusivity. And 508 compliance is about having accessibility and inclusion with virtual presentations of information. So, you know, having the closed captioning, having, you know, translation and that type of thing. And there's a whole lot of other things that we could go into, but you could look that up. It's www.section508.gov, and there's a lot of resources there. All right, so our last part here is editing. So we're going to talk about tone, voice, and writing style. And you're going to want to schedule at least 1 week before we get into this, at least a week for edits, if at all possible. This is just giving you time to really thoroughly read through, catch any mistakes, any errors that you have made or omissions that you want to include that are really important. Reread the RFA or the FAQ, any supplemental documents that are provided. Just be sure to compare your answers to what was asked of you. So now the tone, this is kind of in your final edit, the tone is kind of your overall feel of the writing, the attitude that is used to convey the message. And this can vary depending on the topic and audience and the seriousness of what is being communicated. So another helpful tip before you begin writing is to look at the funder's website. And this will kind of give you a clue as to what tone they use when they are writing. You can look at their key priorities and select a few to highlight as they align with your project. You know, you don't want to be making anything up. You want it to be a genuine, authentic alignment. And so let's see. So you're going to want to look at their key priorities and select a few to highlight as they align with your project. And you can also look at the tone of their writing. Are they more problem focused? Meaning, do they highlight the problems being addressed and then cultivate maybe compassion or a call to action? Or do they highlight like a positive tone, emphasizing possibilities, solutions, hopeful vision for the future? These are like just subtle nuance differences that I think it makes a difference. And I think if you're speaking in a way that the funder kind of mirroring their tone, that can really help draw them in and help them track with your ideas and maybe see the connection and the fit is a little better there. Okay, so an example of just kind of tone in general for government grants, you're going to want to use very formal technical writing. You want to have a lot of data, research, approached, and they're going to prefer the quantitative data over the qualitative data, which is your numbers data over your narrative, like stories and quotes and that type of thing. Foundation grants are a little more flexible, and they sometimes prefer more of the qualitative data, such as the stories and quotes from the population being served. They can be a little less formal, but yet they'll still incorporate quantitative data. So be sure you know your funder, as some foundations, like a hospital foundation, may want to see more numerical data demonstrating improved health outcomes. So are you able to track this? Are you able to provide them with meaningful data for what's meaningful to them and to you and your participants, if that's what your project is about? The next part is voice. So the voice is kind of the personality of the writing. It's your perspective, your worldview. So for example, I'm writing from, the United States with a Western cultural perspective, in the Bay Area through an education lens, that type of thing. And to know that, it's just helpful to know, like in writing and just in, our professional careers, that we all come from a specific social location, and to realize that it informs how we think and how we see the world and how we write. The next suggestion is to use a third person singular perspective. So instead of saying, we will implement 3 workshops, you're going to want to be a little more formal and say the Santa Clara County Office of Education, or we call ourselves the SCCOE, will implement 3 workshops. So try to not use the we, our kind of language. That's a little more informal, and we want to keep it formal. And finally, the style is kind of the mechanical or technical aspects of writing and may be specific to the requirements of the subject or topic. So in our case, this is grant writing, which is a technical form of writing. Moving on to the format. So when you're editing, you're going to want to look at your format again. So do they want the submission to be uploaded online to a grant portal or sent via email? Do they want you to print a paper copy and mail that in? These are all things that are important to note, because for some of them, you're going to need more time to plan, or if they want you to compile it all into one PDF, that's going to take some time as well. So just plan for maybe some technology glitches, and give yourself enough time to not be running out to a mail courier to get your application there by 5 p.m. and it's 4 p.m. So it'll reduce your stress if you are able to plan ahead and stick to that plan. So again, noting those formatting requirements, as sadly they can disqualify you even if you have a really great idea. All right, some other tips, as I mentioned, schedule 1 week for edits, avoid slang or jargon. So you don't want to use any figures of speech or any like casual phrases. You want to keep it, as if you're writing a college paper or something, but again, not too theoretical or philosophical. You want to be pretty direct and to the point. So specific and succinct. Use the active voice. So an example of a passive voice would be participants were seen to demonstrate an increase in attendance rates after participating in the program. An active voice says participants' attendance increased after participating in the program. So you can see how one is just more direct, it's clear, it's more action-oriented, and the other one might sound kind of flowery, but that's not the type of writing we're doing here. So keep it in the active voice. Avoid run-on sentences because they're going to lose you. So you want to keep your sentences short, to the point, and again, avoid overly academic language. You don't want to write to sound smarter and demonstrate how much you know. You want to write to communicate clearly to the reader who's probably not going to be an expert. And then finally, I just wanted to share a resource that I love for editing is the Purdue Online Writing Lab. And there's no affiliation or anything. It's just, there's so many great websites for editing, but this is one that I use. They have a lot of really great resources and they have some specific to grant writing. So that's one that I like to use. All right, so in closing, let's see here. So grant writing enables us to find creative solutions to the problems and needs of our communities. It communicates these needs and our proposed solutions in clear, concise, and focused ways to gain buy-in from supporters and result in high impact programs and services. So we've got our compelling, our concise, focused, high impact proposal and program design. So I just want to encourage you that you can be a grant writer. It does take practice. So even if you don't win the first one, don't be discouraged. Eventually you'll find a funder whose values align with your needs and you will find success. So keep applying, keep learning, and build off previous work and to refine and improve your writing. You've got this. Thank you. Additional resources can be found on the SCCOE's YouTube channel under the Grants, Partnerships, and Operations playlist. If you have questions, feel free to email us at grants_office@sccoe.org. And if you could kindly fill out a brief Google survey to provide feedback on this workshop, we would greatly appreciate it. And that survey can be found at https://scco.to/WRITING. And that link should hopefully be in the video description. So again, thank you for your time, and I hope this was a helpful presentation for you. Thanks.